Welcome back to the Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is an AI strategist, an AI educator, and somebody building a whole bunch of cool things with AI, which is exactly the type of people that we want to talk to. Dustin Jensen is with AIAsystem.com, and this is the AI Factory. But Dustin, we have to ask you first, when we're talking about the AI Factory, we're not talking about you building a whole bunch of Terminator robots, are we? Help us with the human first version of what you're doing there.
No, we're trying to follow the Skynet business model. That's that's the entire plan.
Oh no.
No, the AI Factory, the best way to kind of think about the AI Factory is it's just we do a lot of workflow discovery. So we just go out there, we discover workflows. Once we discover them, we build them, we produce them, and we ship them.
And I think we're in an interesting time here as we sit, towards the second half of 2025. AI agents are all the rage, but that can mean a lot of things. In my world, for the marketing automation has been around a long time. That's not really an AI agent acting autonomously. Those are sort of just triggers, like the websites, if this, then that, or however you pronounce the automation one, Zapier. Those have been around for a while. Can you tell us what is maybe better or different than the automation we've had in the past with the AI agents now?
Well, first off, there was most automation had logic, but maybe not intelligence. If you want to use that, having some sort of intelligence behind it, which that's what's allowed large language models to dramatically help us. From a large language model, from what we know of, like ChatGPT, is also the ability to use more unstructured data in our potential, workflows. And unstructured data could be just a recording from this meeting, or email threads, things like that, where you're able to just extract these conversations and use them for context to maybe to be able to help the automation. But if you're looking at how much more AI improves the automations that you already have, it's coming along, but it's not there, all the way. And I would say the big difference is I would say particularly to AI agents, is we always talk about closing the loop. You'd be able to close the loop. It's not an agent if it can't close the loop. So like right now, most people use ChatGPT or something similar as a co-pilot. And it's really augmenting their workflow. It's really augmenting them. But they still have to be full or mostly full human in the loop, or at least a big portion in the loop. And it's not closing the loop. And so we always say sometimes there are really complex tasks that it's just better for a person to be there and using AI as a co-pilot. But there is a lot of lower complexity type workflows that we can close the loop on. And closing the loop would be as simple as, if you told AI to go out and do something, whether it was scrape data, create content, create a blog and post a blog, or it does everything and actually sends out the email. So if someone sent you an email requesting documents and an agent went in there, seen what documents needed, got the documents, brought them back, and sent out the email, that would be closed because it completed the task. Automation kind of can do that, but it doesn't have quite the reasoning and intelligence behind it. And a lot of in the difference is large language models are able to look at unstructured data.
I like that a lot. Unstructured data, I think, is a big one. The other one is sort of multi-step things. There were multi-step automations in, HubSpot or something like that, where we can send this email, then do this, but they weren't necessarily linked together. like in a variable data way as we went through these automations and workflows. It was pretty much do this, then this, then this. And now we can kind of say, do this, and based on the result, do this where it is. I think that's a big advancement. And you mentioned in your intake form, I don't know if it's still true, as Manus is one of your favorite AI tools. And I think maybe if we think about how Manus is different than ChatGPT, it'll help explain, some of the differences in AI agents versus like, an automation or a generative tool. Can you tell me why you like Manus and what you use it for?
Well, when I talked about that, that was before ChatGPT released their agent mode. So now ChatGPT does have agent mode. So basically, agent mode is equivalent to that. So it would be hard for me to say that it's my favorite tool now. ChatGPT gets to be my favorite tool again.
Yeah.
Because of that. But if you were to look at before ChatGPT had agent mode and use Manus, what was different about that was I went in and I gave it as much context as possible and, gave it steps that it needed to do. And it just went out and it would do whatever it took to complete this task. So unlike a typical automation, we would have had to set up some sort of logic. We'd have to create these APIs, these integrations, and all these things would have to happen. Now we have something that we don't have to overly pre-think. You got to give it the right context, but from now moving forward, we don't have to actually have to fully think through that logic, because now it's got reasoning. It can kind of understand, and as long as you give it the right direction, it can go out and basically complete the task. Now, I'll give you a great example of the way I look at it, and this is a way for people to also start understanding context, because a lot of people talk about prompt engineering. There's this a little bit more trendy now is context engineering.
I love that. That's my favorite new term. Yeah.
And the best way to look at context engineering is if you have like an employee or someone you supervise or whatever it is, right? If you hire them on to do something, right, you have to give them a certain amount of context, a certain amount of tools and direction, and then say, go out and do it. And that's what an agent is doing, right? You're giving it enough. So an agent's no different than, say, someone you hire or, someone you supervise. You still got to give them that information,
Yeah, I think about it like a college intern, and it's a very intelligent, PhD level intellect, but without any work experience or context around what you're trying to accomplish. If you have a genius level IQ intern, you still have to tell them, here's what we do here, here's what I want you to do, here's the outputs that I'm looking for in order to get it to or them to do good work. And that's the way I think about it now too. I thought even your note about how it's changed just in the last couple of months since you filled out my intake form is that this stuff changes all the time, and that's why you need experts here to be paying attention. But also, just because something wasn't possible when you last looked, even last week, doesn't mean it's not possible now. The example I always give is that AI couldn't handle text and images, and it still can't very well, but can do significantly better this year than it could last year, and even now a few months than it could a few months ago. And so all this changes so fast. I think you really have to pay attention. And if you're trying to do something important in your business, talk to an expert AI strategist like Dustin or something and say, hey, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. How can we solve it? Maybe we can't close the loop today, but could we get 90% of the way there? And then when something comes out, be able to close that loop, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you work with your clients and the types of problems that you're solving, or what people should be aware of that's possible today?
Yeah, so right now we do a lot of, so we have kind of two parts of our business. We do a lot of enterprise custom development. So we go out and traditionally we'd go out and we get a product requirement, and they'd come back and they talk to us to give the product requirement. We'd scope out the project, and then we would go build out whatever that requirement is that they have. The other part of our business, we're actually building our own infrastructure, our own tools and products that we're building out. But we focus more on the custom development, because what happens is while we're working with clients and we're doing that, we're finding out what's actually working or what has good market signals, and that's how we're kind of building our products. But to kind of go back to the custom development, what we've realized is that in ideal world, they would give us a product requirement. But then when they say, hey, we need AI, and we're saying, where's your product requirement? Then it's just a blank look. Like, well, what do you mean? I don't even really know what AI really is, much less do I know what a product what a product requirement would look like. All I do know is we need to implement this in our business. So that's as far as most people get. And then, I mean, people do have ideas, but then those are typically them completely misunderstanding the tech stack, or they don't fully know the capability, or they underestimate the capabilities, or they're just trying to throw AI on top of whatever they're doing, and that's not quite the answer. So we've kind of dialed back a little bit more, and we early on we move a little bit into like a consultant role, quickly getting to pilot programs quickly. Because before they'll really understand, we got to get it in their hands, but we have to act as a consultant, because we have to go in and do what I used this term earlier, is workflow discovery. So we do workflow discovery with them. So we have to go in and start understanding their organizations, their information flows, their workflows, and understand that. Now, the nice thing is this is where kind of human first AI can kind of come in a little bit, because when we go and you start looking at these workflows, there's a major human element there, mostly a human element that exists. And there's somebody there that is an SME, a subject matter expert, that really understands that. And you still have to have that person figure out that really intimately understands that workflow. And you still need that person. Now, the other thing too, why we do that workflow discovery, is because most of these enterprises are not trying to disrupt these workflows. They're like a cash cow for them. It's a proven working model, and all they want to do is preserve that inside the AI and the AI space. So we come in and we take those steps, but we try not to stay at that consultant level quick. We try to quickly get to pilot programs as fast as we can. And then that's the first steps that we usually take with the organization.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it takes me to two other questions for you. One is, I think people, in my experience, still aren't even understanding maybe what AI can do for them and the types of problems that it solves. So I'm wondering if you can help us think about this and maybe get a little free consulting from you. If you were thinking about us, like, I think a lot of people just assume AI is ChatGPT and generative AI, but they don't understand this, retrieval system or augmented reality or any other autonomous agents and workflows that they could automate. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the different flavors of AI or the different problems that it can solve for us in our business that actually saves us time or money?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess there's obviously a whole layer to kind of understanding that, you're talking about like RAG systems, and that's kind of where unstructured data really sets to allow the LLM to use that context, right? So, not to get into the technical terms, you just need the context, right? And so getting into workflows and the way to start thinking about it, well, it's really tough, because that's the part where we come in and we really have to try to understand the organization. Like myself, I've been working with high growth startups for many years as a fractional executive. So I've just done that as my career as a whole. So I just step in and do the same thing with an AI twist, and with the technical expertise and understanding to do it. And that's kind of what makes an AI growth strategist is that kind of person. But the best thing for people to start doing inside their organization that I think is a great way to get started is start looking at, two different metrics: complexity and volume. And right. So we simply put workflows into this category: low, medium, and high complexity. Right. So low complexity is just an AI that takes phone calls and makes appointments. Very low complexity, right? Medium complexity might be if that AI needs to now interact with someone and maybe actually carry them a little ways down the sales funnel, to maybe explain products or do some customer service, provide things like that. And that's really easy to do, right? It's the same large language agent. It's just you give it more context on the company, more dialed in context, to do that. And then high complexity is if you wanted this full on funnel agent that just it went out and scraped the internet, found the lead, interacted with the lead, and then carried them all the way down to the funnel. That would be high complexity. I'm kind of putting that in marketing terms, but there's a lot of different organizations. You can look at whatever vertical or horizontal you want. You can measure things maybe by low, medium, and high complexity. Then you need to look at volume. Is it low, medium, or high volume? Right. And so if it's low complexity, low volume, probably not much, there's not a lot of opportunity there. It's probably not where you want to focus. Now, if it's low complexity and high volume, well, that's absolutely primed to do that. So a scheduler, so a person that does an agent that coordinates schedules for a large enterprise, that would be an ideal thing to implement into the company right away. And then what you don't want to do is high complexity, low volume. Then you might as well. Then at that point, a person would probably it's best to keep the SME in place and then just give them a co-pilot, like maybe an optimized version of ChatGPT to be able to do that. And so that's the very first step to start wrapping your head around, where there's opportunities. And of course, there's a lot of other things to kind of look at, but that is a great place to start looking.
I love that. I love that framework for thinking about it. And if it's low volume and high complexity, it better be a very expensive problem you're trying to solve. If it's costing you $1 million a year or something, maybe we'll work on it. But otherwise, keep those people in place. I like to think about it that way. And then when I think about marketing, I kind of think of some different buckets of items too. Obviously, like generative AI in marketing, we're creating a lot of content, but we also are working in sort of like a predictive analytics model where we're like, we need to be able to speak to the right person at the right time. And we need to process information that is so large, humans really couldn't do it at that. So you're talking about maybe high complexity, but it's really more high volume, that there's 1 million targets in our database. We don't know which one is highest probability of closing this month. We got to go figure that out with some sort of analytics, or we need to know what the highest probability is, because we can't afford to spend money or time reaching all of those people. And then there's some interesting stuff that I would love to talk about next, maybe, is kind of the machine learning aspect of stuff, that if over time we see patterns happening, that kind of blends predictive analytics, but we can start teaching through this context and building systems that improve over time, right? Those are ones that you and I haven't talked about yet, but I think get me so excited is that there has been so many wasted moments in our business where we solved the same problem over and over again, and we never captured the solution to it, or we never updated the employee manual or the contextual data. And I just see so many conversations coming from like ticket boards and all kinds of, email responses or other types of customer outreach, that we don't even realize how frequent those problems are. And we need something monitoring all of that to let us know when something goes wrong, and then we can flag it for human intervention or to create a solution around it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. We think about that. I mean, we call, we kind of have a tool that we're developing that we call like an Oracle agent. It's sort of an Oracle of the whole, maybe of the whole company or of all the company's data. And the idea is, so when we go in, so we kind of talked about some low level consulting and some frameworks to work from. But what you really when you start actually getting into it, you have to start, like I said, you have to start getting this workflow, understanding the workflows and the data flows and things like that. But what we want to work towards over time is if we tackle, so let's say we tackle low complexity, high volume, and then we want to kind of work to that medium complexity, whether it's medium volume. But what we're really trying to accomplish at that point is we want to start building out a more of a multi-agent ecosystem into the business. Because some of these simple tasks, it's not just a single agent doing it. If there's one agent, it could be one agent scraping data, one cleaning the data, one ingesting the data, validating the data, and it could be but there could be just one, analytical agent. So there's one single agent that's an orchestrating agent, but that orchestrating agent is part of a greater workflows or workflows that intersect, things like that. And so you start to try to intersect this, and where our Oracle agent could end up being is something that's just always there available, that you can always ask the question to and get the answer. So like if you have a sales team, they don't need to go back and ask, well, what's the pricing? They don't need to go through channels to understand pricing updates.
Right.
Pricing, there was a leadership meeting. They decided on the pricing. The note taker took that. We said, this is fine. Do we approve? We approve, it's final. And then within, a matter of instantly, if the sales team asked, well, what's the new pricing structure? They have the answer. It's done. And so you sort of have, and that's not on, and so you have all these agents out there gathering these different points of data, like what you're talking about, all these tasks happening, because that's a number one problem in a lot of organizations, siloing of information and slow communication. It even happens in small teams, happens. And so that is it's a great use case. And it's something that you can slowly build the complexity of. It could just be, it's not all information. And then it's something you can control too, because obviously privacy and maybe some people not getting access to certain information is needed, but then you just have a privacy agent that monitors that.
Yeah, you can figure out those problems. I think those are solvable problems. So I wanted to ask you, last one about kind of these processes and things, is that Copilot that you mentioned. When you bring up Oracle, it kind of makes me think of the Copilot. I always use the Iron Man Jarvis AI, analogy of like, I have this virtual assistant that they always kind of build like Alexa and Amazon and stuff as that. It really wasn't that. It was an answer, and it was programmed, to answer dumb questions like what's the weather, but not read the information and say, hey, here's something you don't know. That's what I think is cool about more like the Jarvis or the Oracle idea is it's maybe prompting you as the human versus you prompting it. And it's saying, hey, in the sales call, you missed this, or in this customer journey or customer service steps, you missed this. Go back and check it before you go on. And that to me is a game changer, because now we're talking about proactive AI versus just reactive, automation that we had before.
Yeah.
Have you seen people using it that way in training or in Copilot with that Oracle function?
Well, that's a behavioral thing that people have to overcome. I do that with the way I interact with AI personally. Like if I'm using any generic tool like ChatGPT or Claude, Gemini, and any of the tools out there, that is the way that I function with it. And if it doesn't, a lot of the tools have it built in now that it's automatically going to ask for clarification. But when I'm giving it context, I always say, make sure you ask me clarifying questions. Make sure you ask me, and I always go through and even if it gave me an answer and I made modifications, I'm always asking, well, where do you think now? Where, I'm going through this feedback loop with it. And if I feel like it's not doing a great job, I always just go and take it over to another one of the foundation models and ask it. But people using it that way is probably not. It's not really the normal, and that's the hard part in the organization. So I didn't really mention, we did come up with a methodology that we work, and it's called ADAPT, and it kind of covers that because. In the ADAPT, we have the ADAPT methodology. We go in and do an assessment. And I talked a lot about that. That's that discovery piece and things like that. And then differentiate in it. It's just that we've actually identified what we're going to work on. This is how we're going to start separating ourselves, whether from the market competition or just separating our current situation to a different situation. Then we acquire, which means we get the tools, the team to actually start deploying this. But once you get down to the pivot and what we call like transforming the the workflow force and things like that, that's the part where you can build all these tools, but we have to start figuring out how we deploy that into the organization and people start using them properly. And I can't. This is deploying this and building these tools are still pretty new. That I probably can't give you an honest answer on how well that's going, because that's kind of it's in process. Like, I mean, we're still trying to figure it out, and it's really tough because that's kind of where things start to fall apart, is people actually deploying it, because everyone's so used to working a certain way that it's hard to change that. So our general philosophy, I don't want to get into the future a little bit, but our general philosophy though is the problem is if someone has to learn AI, is it really AI? That's the way I kind of look at it. Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I agree with you on that. I think I've always been a big fan of just engineering thinking and like design solutions that if it's a really good product, people should intuitively want to use it and start using it more and grow on it. If it's something like spent the last 15 years in professional development and sales training and stuff, nobody wants to use a CRM. It's horrible. It's been clunky. It's the hardest thing in the world to get a salesperson to start using, especially somebody that's outgoing, charismatic in sales and stuff. This is just not their nature, right? So now if we have AI that's actually listening to their calls and then filling in the information in the CRM for them, they don't have to do it. Great. They're going to turn that on. They're going to make sure it every day. Hey, I don't want to have to fill out my TPS report. So I've got to make sure that my call recorder is in this meeting. Is it okay if I turn it on? And they're excited about it, right? Yeah. You don't have to manage that change at all for them. And I think more of our solutions need to be design solutions like that. But I also get what you mean there. In trying to change any type of human behavior, it's a slow process. And I think more companies need to be careful with that as they talk about transforming the workforce or replacing people with agents, is that you also have to then train your customers to go and be comfortable with using the AI agents and all the other stuff in there. If it's not a really great solution, you can run into problems and end up having to roll it back or lose customers, employees over the change management part of the process. Mm-hmm. But that's another question for another day, because before I let you go, I want to ask you about your prediction for the future. If you looked out at the business world, I think there's this horizon in my mind of like AGI, but let's say like past that. So we're like 15, 30 years in the future within our lifetime. What do you think the business world looks like? Which sci-fi movie would we end up in?
Which sci-fi movie would we end up in? Probably WALL-E. Yeah. Maybe people don't know that one. I mean, maybe
that's a popular one. Guess on the show if people haven't seen it, but I think that's a fear for me. That's not idealistic, I suppose.
Well, no, so I think it's just so tough. Like I think about it a lot. I know in the near term, we're going to go through. There's going to be some disruption in the workforce, just because we have to kind of figure out what. We have to kind of figure out what this means when we have something that can complete, a lot of the work task, because we're all very much task driven. That's what we do, and then, and early on we'll have human in the loop, and then that's slowly going to be less human in the loop. It's probably not going to increase, because the idea of AI is over time, whatever you're at, the value you're adding, it's probably going to start being able to handle that as well. So, the things that I try to think about a little bit more in the future is not so much what the capability of the technology is, because it's going to be, whatever you kind of think, it's going to be this, unrecognizable economy and world that we're in. But what we really have to start focusing on is just human, human psychology and just emotional things that we're going to deal with as a society. Because because we could live in a world where AI creates all the productivity, so we no longer have to be productive. So that means whatever the AI is doing, we can benefit from that, probably from a wealth stance. If we design it properly, we all benefit from that wealth. So nobody's going hungry, knowing, everyone's got proper medical care. All those things are covered. So they're covered. But what happens when we no longer have this task driven, day, or this path to abundance and things like that is not there? Then what do we do?
It's awesome. And I so appreciate you bringing that up, because that's my philosophy. I actually wrote a book on it that's on the shelf back here called Playful Humans, which is like, really, if all of your needs are covered through machines and robots, like I always use the analogy, if Elon Musk is able to colonize Mars, that means he's got to provide everything that humans would need to survive on Mars before we send a human. Right? Because we can't just send somebody out there to die.
Yes.
Well, if we can provide everything a human needs to survive on Mars, we can certainly do it here on Earth. Right? So then
Correct.
What's the role of humans in that? And I think play, creativity, connection, and other types of fun, flow, fulfillment need to come into play, rather than, like you said, the task-oriented work part. So that's a super fun conversation. Another one, deep conversation that could go on all day. We'll save that for another time. Dustin, thank you so much for your time and the free consulting today. You can find Dustin Jensen on LinkedIn. Connect with him and follow. Good stuff he's sharing there. And then AIAsystem.com is the website. They are the AI factory, even though they've changed the A, the I, and the A meanings multiple times with all the growth and technology out there. I feel like it's like GEO and AIO and AEO and stuff that people are trying to make up for answer engine optimization these days. But Dustin, tell us what you're up to, how we can help you, or you can help us.
I think the biggest thing that we try to do is try to connect with subject matter experts in the marketplace, and just interact with them and try to understand their workflows, the struggles they have, and things like that. And so one great way is just, you can go to LinkedIn, connect with me. Very casual meetings. If you have something that you specialize in and you see a possibility that AI could be part of that, we love to just talk to people about that. And it's not a soft sales pitch or anything. It's just legitimately, we're trying to discover workflows and talk to subject matter experts and just understand what's going on with them in the market. And I think that's a great way that can help us and maybe help someone else, because then they can bring their subject matter expertise, and we can bring our AI expertise, and maybe meet somewhere in the middle.
And you're working on a book too. Tell me about the book real fast.
Yeah, it's in pre-launch right now. It's the ADAPT methodology, which I kind of brought up briefly. And it's basically just a methodology to allow enterprises, or it could be anybody, any business owner, to have a process to go through to kind of move through, through this AI transformation. And but it's been written and designed to be more evergreen. So it's not meant to just stop, during the next 5 years or 10 years. It's just an idea that it's always going to be changing, and from a fundamental, it's an iterative process. So when you get to the very end of the methodology, the T part, where you transform the workforce, you go all the way back up to assessed, and you do it again. And it allows you to constantly move with AI and be able to continue to adapt as it changes.
We're all going to have to learn how to adapt and be flexible as we go forward, for sure. And as far as me and Avenue 9, if you're looking to do that context engineering that we're talking about here, what I do is interview your founder, your top salesperson, your best clients, your partners and vendors, and build a contextual database for your generative AI and your marketing that allows you to tell your story better, scale that story in all the channels that you possibly can for marketing, and connect better, resonate with your audience. If that sounds like something you need, go to avenue9.com. Until next time, share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it, and keep going. Have fun.